Chapter 47. Blue. Shauna, what the hell? Master's nearly yelling, and I get the idea that he would be yelling if there was more than a door separating him from the main ballroom. I can't stand that bitch, Shauna offers, in lieu of an actual explanation as to why she's signed us both up for whatever Genevieve wants to do to us. Be that as it may, why did you bring us into it? He voices the exact question on my mind. I don't know what she's signed us up for, what kind of test Genevieve has in mind for us, but I do know that she already doesn't like us. I don't enjoy tests that are designed for failure. I've been a part of too many in my life. Ande doesn't seem to have any sort of issue with his mistress's actions. He stands coolly unaffected behind her as our masters talk. He's been signed up for this unknown test as well. How can he be so calm about it? Because you need to wipe that smug smile off her face, Shauna replies, and I have to play catch-up from the last moment I got caught in my wandering thoughts. Ah, truly a master plan, and how am I supposed to do that? Master's voice drips with sarcasm. Well, we're going to show her up. Shauna responds like it's the simplest matter in the world, like she hasn't considered the hell that will break loose on us for this. At her own party, in front of the entire grade. This is a glorious plan, Shauna. Just one question. I thought we were trying to have her not want to kill me anymore? Master's barbed remark is sharp, but not terribly acidic. Oh, you know as well as I do that this kind of attention-grabbing stunt will go over fantastically with the class. Why else would you have taken her for a spin in the air? Shauna shoots back unconcerned, turning away from her argument with him to face Ande. Forgive me, but that is not the primary concern, Master huffs, sounding more than a little miffed at this whole situation. Oh, what are you so worried about? Shauna dismisses his concerns without diverting any attention from her fiddling with Ande's collar. Blue! Just like you should be worried about Ande! Master practically explodes, and I have to hide a flinch as I go to move slightly behind him. All this time, and I'm still not good with loud noises. I'm not good with the way they are comfortable arguing. It's still hard for me to reconcile in my mind that their anger won't spill over to me, that Kara won't hit me because he can't hit Shauna, that I'm the more expendable of the two familiars here. I'm not worried about Ande because I know he's perfectly obedient. She smiles, ruffling her familiar's hair until he croons, leaning into her touch. Yeah, well... Master watches the scene with a pensive look on his face, and I feel my heart drop to the floor. Does he not think I'll obey him? Are you telling me you are worried about Blue? Because we both know he would throw himself into the path of a carriage for you. Shauna defends me when I can't even find the mental capacity to make the argument myself. I would. There's a part of me that wants to throw myself to my knees and tell this man that I would. If he asked, I'd throw myself in front of a carriage. I'd do anything he said. That really isn't the issue, Master hedges, and whatever doubt remains in his tone pushes me to finally speak. I'm obedient. I will do whatever you require of me. It comes out of me in one ungraceful rush, and there's a deafening silence that follows as I realize I've cut my master off. Everyone's eyes are on me, and I feel distinctly like a bug about to be pinned to a slide. See? There's no problem. Shauna breaks the silence without regard for the tense moment, and as Master turns away from me to address his friend, I can't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Shauna, Master prods gently, looking ready to say something more before the doors on the opposite side of the room are thrown open. Genevieve swings open the two overly large doors with far too much enthusiasm, leading a smaller group of people in beside her. There's a group of students that I don't recognize, but I notice Avery getting pulled along right away. I've seen these familiars before at the care center, but I haven't had the chance to really interact with any of them. Zia and Sui are not here, and that's my only consolation. We have some more volunteers. She speaks far too animatedly for the situation we're in. Oh, this is going to be fun. Everyone, just leave your familiars here and we can discuss the rules. She smiles and quickly leaves the room, not waiting to see if anyone is following her. The familiars find a place to settle down. Some lean against the wall, while some just sit down on the floor around one another. They're settling in for the long haul. They don't know when they will be called back again. I know I should just find a place to sit beside Ande or Avery. I should just sit down and keep my mouth shut and be a good familiar. But I'm not a good familiar. As the people begin to filter out of the room, following their host, I catch the sleeve of my master's uniform, pulling him back. I'm scared. I don't want him to leave. Master? I can say nothing more than that, hoping that the entirety of my plea, the fullest extent of my need, is conveyed in the only word I can say. Master gives me a weak smile, not unsympathetic to my plight, but not doing anything to fix the situation either. Don't worry, Blue. I'll be right back. He tries for a reassuring tone as he gives my hand a gentle squeeze, but even I feel how hollow the promise rings. Proving Genevieve's point there, aren't you? Kalu jeers, coming up behind my master and throwing an arm around his shoulders in a mocking gesture of camaraderie, before almost literally dragging him out of the room. The doors close and I feel my face flush red as nothing is distracting me from all the whispering behind me. I've made a scene, and everyone knows it. I might as well have announced myself as some weepy child, still delusional enough to think his master loves him. If there had been any doubt in their minds that I was just some spoiled, overindulged pet, there is none any more. I'm the reason they're in this mess. The reason their masters decided to partake in a game that was not part of the original plans for the night. Without my interference, there would be no test, and there would be no chance to disappoint their masters with their performance in front of the entire grade. This is all my fault. I don't know all the people. If they've heard of me before this, it probably wasn't very flattering. My master has a target painted on his back from his peers. I doubt I'm any different. Just because I'm only his familiar doesn't mean I'm saved from people's distaste. Avery waves me over from where I stand, lost and desolate-looking, by the door where my master has left me. She and Ande have made a little place for themselves by the far wall. Both of them look at me expectantly, and I can't help the way I quirk a smile at that. They aren't mad, at least. I may be nervous, but I'm not alone. I'm sorry, guys. I stutter out a quiet apology as I rush to sit beside them, studiously avoiding the looks the others keep sending my way. What for? Ande, uncharacteristically, speaks out first. I got you into this mess. I try to explain myself without having a complete breakdown, like the raccoon dog in the corner. Ah, so you control my mistress's tongue? He smiles down at me while I gape up at him. How could he think that? No, that's not... I try to defend myself, but he just sets a hand on my head and gives a reassuring, if somewhat awkward, pat. Blue, this isn't your fault. His chuckle is a low, rumbling noise, but no less soothing. He's created a pretty airtight case for how this isn't my fault, but I still feel guilty. All those thoughts fly quickly from my mind as Avery drapes herself across both our laps. Yeah, if anything, it's my fault. She sounds far away, but no less sincere, though I have no idea why. Avery, what are you... I try to ask, but she cuts me off. I let Kalu get a hold of you. I should have thought it through. Her ears wilt and her tail flicks in frustration as she curls around us. Avery, that isn't your burden to bear. I say reassuringly. This wasn't her fault. She couldn't control her master's whims. Then it isn't yours either. She speaks with such certainty that I'm actually taken aback. I suppose she has a point, though. She couldn't control her master's gaze any more than I could have avoided attracting his attention. It wasn't like I actively tried to get noticed. I was just pulled along. Though I can find no fault with the logic, there's something in me that tells me I'm wrong. Some old bit of training that reminds me that this whole confrontation was my fault, that I shouldn't be trying to pass the blame off on the masters, that they did nothing wrong. I'm shaken out of those musings as the doors open and one of the familiars is called. They tremble, but go forward without complaint, leaving our temporary sanctuary. It seems that the rules have been decided on and the games have begun. We don't talk about how, one by one, we are getting let out. We don't talk about how none of us knows what the game they've chosen is, or what the rules might be. We cuddle, hold each other, and try not to dwell on those thoughts. Ande and Avery go before me. Looking around at the only 5 or so left, I realize that I'm one of the last to go. Blue? I hear my master's voice call for me, and I immediately go to the door. He gives me a weak smile and a look that tries to convey his apologies before he pulls out a strip of black cloth. My mouth goes dry as I realize what it is. Blindfold. My mind reels, trying to come up with a way to keep it from going over my eyes. But this has to be one of the rules for the game. I force myself to go still. I can't obey without it. I have to wear it. Otherwise my master will suffer for my actions. Again. I know the forced stillness looks unnatural, but it's a hell of a lot better than bolting like I want to. I press my hands flat against my sides to stop them from shaking, and clench my teeth together to stop my protests. He wouldn't do this if there was another way. He doesn't want to hurt me. I repeat it over and over again in my head as I stare, waiting for the strip of cloth to go over my head. But Master never moves. Blue, do you trust me? He speaks so calmly, as though he doesn't see the state the object is working me into. Yes, Master, I reply without a second's hesitation. It's the right answer. It's the only answer I have. Even after that, the blindfold doesn't move in my master's hands. He hooks 2 fingers under my chin until he pulls my gaze from the cloth in his hand to his face. He looks resigned. Okay, I trust you. There's something in the simple, matter-of-fact tone that he uses that settles me instantly. The weight on my chest is lessened, and my body relaxes into his touch, but he doesn't let my head drop down again. Tell me your safe word. It's an order, but spoken so firmly and without the pressure and insistence that demands answering that it takes me off guard. It's the voice he's only used on me a few times, commanding and so utterly sure he'll get an answer that he doesn't have to bother with useless intimidation. I beg your mercy. I speak much more levelly than I feel, but it isn't like his command is all that hard to comply with, though it is a bit confusing why he'd be bringing this up now. Do you need to use it? He says it as though he's asking if I want a coat before going out, and I have to fight not to gape up at him. But his eyes don't change. There's no mirth for his obvious joke, and I realize he's not joking. He'd let me call it here, say no, and walk away from this game, taking the backlash from his peers to spare me some discomfort. No. I wish I was as confident as I sounded in my head. I hate the little tremble my voice takes on. It's not hesitance, I'm just overwhelmed. Good, he says simply, moving slowly enough that I have time to realize that it's time to put the blindfold on, and yet quickly enough that I don't have the time to flinch back. He smooths the fabric so it's not twisted over my skin. It's tight, but not painful, and I can see nothing. "You know you can use it, right?" he whispers, and I'm a little taken aback by how close he is. I doubt he's more than an arm's length away. He seems to have remained by my side after tying the fabric. "Yes." I try to quiet the tremble in my voice with little success. What does he mean? He'd let me use it even here? Even with all the trouble I've caused him? I understand him offering me a chance to back out before we've gone into the main hall. But to say that I can object, even surrounded by his peers, is something else entirely. To back down from a challenge, even if it is just a simple game at a party, would cause him no small amount of shame and ridicule from his classmates. I don't like how much I'm comforted by the thought that he'd step in if I claim that they're going too far. I don't like how much I trust it. "All right, just follow my instructions. I promise I will protect you. Tell me if it's too much." He presses a kiss to my temple, and I curl my hand in the fabric of his uniform. I'm only a bit off from where I thought he was. I catch his shoulder and correct myself accordingly. This is terrifying, but exhilarating. I don't have many good memories of being cut off from my senses, but I trust he won't hurt me. I just have to wrap myself around that belief and pray he doesn't yank my tail. "I will do my best, Master." It's not much, but it is the best I can promise. "Excellent," he says simply, pulling one arm around my waist and simply holding my hand with his free one as he leads me from the hallway we had stopped in. I try my best to breathe deeply and evenly, to match my master's step and move with him without concern for where I'm going. I feel myself falling into that hazy state that starts to take over when I've been in a master's presence for too long, when the whole of my body has cut ties with me, and I'm just left as a vessel to be commanded. I don't make too many mistakes when I just react with mindless obedience, and in that state it's hard to think for myself, let alone panic. I can't help but think how useful it will be for this party, how good I will be for my master, even as I try to push away the thoughts of how jarring coming back to the real world was. It's odd. Usually it takes a while to force myself into this mindset that my masters liked, pliant and submissive, ready for whatever they wanted to use me for. Master hasn't done anything to me. He's inflicted no pain or threats, and yet I find myself slipping into that malleable state. Because of what? His trust and a gentle, guiding hand? His commands feel safe. I want to comply. Not because I have to, but because I want to be obedient. I want to be good. It's not about me being able to do it or not. It's about giving my master what he wants. I feel like putty in his hands. If he didn't have an arm around me, keeping us moving, I swear I might just fold in on myself and turn into a puddle at his feet. I can't see him anymore, or his expression, but the way he's holding me close makes it so that I can scent him. He's one solid mass, pressed against my side, drowning me in his scent and his warmth. The whole scenario's an intoxicating mess. If I hadn't felt this before, I swear I would think it was a spell of some kind. We take a turn, and I hear some reserved giggling. I suppose I must make an odd sight, being led carefully by my master, leaning into him as though I really am melting. We've probably made our way back into the ballroom, or maybe just another room that's got an audience. I try to pull away fractionally so that I'm supporting my own weight again, but I'm not sure how successful I am in maintaining the illusion of propriety. My master doesn't comment on my squirming, choosing to ignore it entirely. I hope all of our observers do as well. I hope it's less obvious than it feels. Every motion I make with this thing on feels comically overlarge, like I'm some flailing, ungainly mess. Eventually, Master stops me in place, allowing me a chance to settle on my own 2 feet before stepping away from me. No, don't go. Something inside me is screaming, and it's entirely beyond my control. There's nothing without his grounding presence. I don't know where I am. I don't know how many people are here watching. I don't even know what I'm expected to do. Losing him as a point of contact is horrifying. I can't stop the squeak that passes my lips as I realize what he's doing. I make a weak attempt to pat blindly at the air in front of me, making entirely futile grabbing gestures, hoping to the stars that he's just stepped a half step away and I can still reach him. There's more giggling and some muttering that I can't make out over the blood rushing in my ears, as another pitiful little noise escapes me. I feel the heat rise in my cheeks as I try to stand up straight and hold my hands to my sides. I have to do better. I can't be the laughing stock of these people again. Master deserves better. I ignore the pain in my chest that desperately wants Master to comfort me, to hold me and praise me and tell me how proud he is of my behavior. I want more than anything to deserve it. So I press my lips together and wait for instruction. I'll be so good that he'll have to praise me by the end. Blue, this is a lesson in obedience. Genevieve's voice rings out, almost echoing through the room, making me think we have come back to the ballroom. I don't know what to think of that. I don't know if all these people have stayed or how many people have left or come in for the spectacle. Distantly, there's a part of me that's upset with having disrupted the dancers, but it's small enough to push aside. Obedience is a simple enough thing in theory, but my stomach is twisting itself into knots. If it's just plain obedience, does that mean I've been separated from my master? Will Genevieve be the one to administer this test? My questions are answered almost immediately as my master speaks. I have to hold myself in check to stop from perking up like some doe-eyed child at the realization that he hasn't left the room. You're going to follow my instructions. He speaks with a hard edge to his words that I don't recognize. The tone makes him sound much more menacing than he actually is. I wonder idly if it's something he's doing to provide a persuasive illusion to his peers, if he's trying to convince them that he actually does treat me properly. Yes, master, I reply, loud and clear, without hesitation. Do you know what you're going to be asked to do? He asks evenly, calm despite the turmoil the question sends my mind spiraling to. Had he told me? I don't remember him instructing me on what we'd be doing here. It certainly would have kept the anxiety at bay to know what was coming. I rack my brain for hints he might have slipped me, but try as I might, I come up with nothing. I stall as long as I dare, trying to come up with a plausible scenario, but in the end I answer with the truth. No, master. I tuck my chin to my chest as I confess my failure. Crystal says truth, Jen, Shauna pipes up not a moment after the words have left my mouth. I can hear the smirk on her face with such clarity that for a moment I'm tempted to stick my tongue out at our hostess. Fine. Check his blindfold and get on with it, Genevieve says with a sigh, too dramatically to be unaccompanied by pretentious hand gestures. With your permission, Sir Kara. A man speaks next to me, and I have to hold myself back from flinching. I hadn't heard anyone move. How long had he been standing so close? All right. I hear Master give his permission, and that's all the warning I have before the person is checking to make sure the blindfold is properly secured. All clear, sir. You may begin. The attendant addresses my master before I can actually hear his footsteps retreating. There's a soft tapping on the hardwood of the ballroom, but it's enough to reassure me. I like being able to tell he's at least moved away. Blue, step forward. 9 steps. Master gives the command in a sharp tone, but he certainly isn't mad. I haven't done anything yet. I succeeded in the first part of the test already, so this has to be something for the benefit of his peers. Still, it's hard to make myself move. I shuffle a hesitant half-step forward, raising my hands to try and make sense of my surroundings before my master reprimands me. Blue, this won't work if you don't trust me. None of that shuffling, okay? I won't be able to instruct you properly if you don't walk normally. I hear the rebuke for what it is. For all that I'm claiming to trust him, I'm still forcing a lot of this on myself. I'm trying to have control, where I don't. What Master said to me in the hallway makes a little more sense now. I have to trust him. My hands go down to my sides, and I force myself to take a slow, steadying breath. I do trust him. I wasn't lying, or trying to placate him or gain favor. He's the first master who's ever wanted a serious answer to that question, and in doing that, he's become the only one to earn the affirmative response. I step forward, trying to pace myself as I normally would when walking. I take slow, confident steps as I count out exactly 9 from where my master had started me. All right, stop, Master calls unnecessarily. Unless his true aim was to allow me to hear the smile in his voice. It's almost enough to undo me right there. I want to bolt from my place in what I can only assume is an obstacle course and fall into his arms. Luckily, when the tiles shift underneath me, it's more than jarring enough to keep me from following through on that impulse. Walk forward. 12 steps. The command comes again, but this time I hesitate. I'd like to think it was from the moving tiles beneath my feet, that I was still jarred by the movement and needed a second to collect myself, but my hesitation is less innocent. I don't know what direction I'm headed. Not that I had before, or even known where I was, but this amount of disorientation is baffling. I have no idea how much of a turn I was forced to make, my mind reeling once the panel had started moving, more concerned with that new development than calculating how much of a turn I had made. Forward is the only direction. Master wouldn't make me run into things. He doesn't like this any more than I do. He's going to keep me safe. I repeat that to myself, stepping forward to follow his instructions to the best of my abilities. The tiles shift me around until I am well and truly lost. But my mind is calm and steady. It's nothing but orders and actions, and it's too easy to fall back into the mindless obedience of it all. 5 steps forward, and then step up, Master orders, and I allow myself to acknowledge that the last command is new before moving to complete the orders. As I step up, my foot comes down too hard, too suddenly, on something other than the ballroom floor. It feels unsteady, though not flimsy in any way. An incline? Made of wood, perhaps? I pause once my feet are firmly on the incline. I don't like this. I can feel the eyes of the audience, but I remind myself that that is not my problem. I'm doing good, and I refuse to let their prying eyes ruin that feeling. Walk forward until I tell you to stop. The command is unexpected, and I have to fight the urge to think about it too hard. I bite down on the inside of my cheek and just start walking. I'm right about one thing. I am on an incline. Each step takes me higher and higher, and I have to fight with myself not to consider the inevitable conclusion that this might have. But then, the platform levels out, and I try to breathe easy. I didn't count my steps, but I doubt the way I'm feeling the need to double over and pant for air like a dog has much to do with the climb being too much of a physical drain. I can't say for certain how high I've climbed, but it can't have been very far. Still, the climb messed with my head. All thoughts flood from my mind as suddenly there is no more floor beneath me. It's pure instinct that makes me throw myself backwards, landing on my butt and finding out the hard way that this platform that I'm on isn't too terribly wide. Stars! I almost walked right off that thing. I didn't say stop. Master's reproach comes, and I feel my blood run cold. Right, he hasn't said stop. He can see the obstacle course. I can't. I don't like the idea of walking over the edge, falling as far as I've climbed. I don't even know how high up I am. But that's the point of the exercise, right? Master's voice was harsh when he reminded me that he hadn't called for me to stop. But that's just for show, right? Just like so much of tonight. A show that he has to put on for his peers. It was nothing like his plea for trust when he came to me before this event started. He asked for my trust, and I gave it. I have to trust him. It's my only choice. I straighten my stance and force my feet to walk casually until there's no more floor to support me. I taste blood as I bite down on the inside of my cheek to stop myself from crying out when I start to fall. Almost as soon as I start to fall, however, I slow. "Hey, no fair!" I hear Genevieve give a strident protest. "I forced him to jump. I can end this little test any way I'd like," Master rebukes, and I can feel the grin on his face. When I finally touch down, there's something soft and cushioned under me. I realize that it probably would have broken my fall even without the assistance of my master's spell, and I get the feeling it was the only reprieve the others got. "I think the reward is due. He did so well after all," Shauna butts in, playing peacekeeper between the two as I find my way to my feet. My knees are wobbly, and after a few seconds trying to get them to hold my weight, I just slump back down onto the cushion and slide down to the floor on my knees. "I'll admit he did better than I would have expected," I hear Genevieve's reluctant confirmation of the facts. "Blue is very well trained." I feel my face heat as I hear my master's voice right next to me, a second before his hands are working at the knot in the blindfold. "Well, he did hesitate up there at the top." Genevieve tries to salvage a piece of her original argument, and I can't help the way my ears twitch at that. I did all that I could to be obedient. What more did she want? I look back over my master's shoulder at the obstacles that I actually faced. Many of the turning stones are bright and gaudy colors, standing out starkly against the soft tones of the wood floor, but much of the rest that needed to be avoided was cans and bottles. I assume they're an effort to make a noise should one of us fail, but what I had been imagining in my head was so much worse. My fifth master had done something like this when he was drunk. He had accidentally smashed one of the empty bottles on the floor and had been somewhat amused by its shattering. At least I assume he was amused by its shattering because he repeated the process with all his empty bottles, until he accidentally threw one with wine still in it. Apparently that was all the inspiration he needed for his game. He tied my hands behind my back and a strip of cloth over my eyes, and led me in broken and slurred speech through his little maze, saying I was dismissed if I could just follow his directions well enough to reach the door of the study. The glass shards hurt, but even worse was the burn of the wine that had puddled on the ground. "And yours didn't?" Shauna baits her, and Genevieve's face goes an angry red as I'm thrust back into reality. Apparently, in the time that's elapsed while I cast my mind back, I've squirmed my way into my master's arms. I'm clinging to him around the waist, and damn, do I feel like a child again. My legs aren't working, and I just want to be held and petted. Is it too much to ask that Master just strokes my head and calls me a good boy? I cast my mind about, trying to rid myself of thoughts of the past. The present has so many things that need attention that it isn't too hard to pull myself from. Judging from the way Shauna rebutted Genevieve's remark, she probably didn't fare as well as my master. And, judging by the red and tan print on Blanc's face, The punishment for that failure is still very much underserved in her mistress's eyes. All thoughts of how to address the situation immediately fly out of my head, though, as Master takes advantage of the crowd's distraction to press a quick kiss to my forehead. "You did so good, Blue. So good for me. I'm gonna get us out of here and—" He says more, but I'm already gone, lost in the featherlight days of having done a good job, of Master being proud of me. I don't hear Master's excuse. I'm barely conscious of how he gets me on my feet long enough to leave the room. My knees are shaking, my chest hurts, and my mouth tastes like blood. But my Master is happy with me. I can't help the dopey grin that spreads itself across my face. I'm happy, too.